everybody, my name is Grace, and today I'm going to continue reading the book Who Was Milton Bradley? Chapter 6 Moving Toys. The Civil War ended in 1865, and the United States struggled to recover from the devastating war. Many businesses were in trouble, but the Milton Bradley Company managed to keep going. Although people didn't have much money, they wanted to have fun. Board games didn't cost that much, and it would be used over and over again to entertain a whole group of people. Milton and Vilona themselves often had 15 to 20 people over to their house to play games. So Milton Bradley kept selling and selling, and kept making new ones. In 1866, Milton studied a toy drum he had ordered from Germany. It had pictures painted on the side. As Milton turned it around and around, he came up with an idea. Milton printed a series of pictures and a long roll of paper. The paper was glued onto a cylinder and set in a box. The person turned a crank to transfer the paper from one cylinder to another. As the paper unspilled, the pictures rolled past a window in the box. Milton decorated each box just like a small stage. Myro pecan with a laugh. When they watched and listened to the story, they played it over and over again. Milton was now fascinated by the idea of moving picture toys. Milton made one called the Zoetrope, or Wheel of Life. His pictures showed figures doing simple movements like chopping wood, running a hurdle race, or flying on a trapeze, which was a big hit. The zoetrope is now considered one of the earliest forms of the motion picture. Not all of Milton's games were played indoors. Crochet, a French long game, had become popular in the United States. Players set up wickets, small metal arches, on their lawns. They used mullets or clubs to try to hit wooden balls through the series of wickets. However, no one played by a standard set of rules. Many people have homemade versions of clubs and wickets. Milton wrote his own simple version of crochet rules and had them patented in 1866. He began to manufacture crochet sets. By 1867, Milton Bradley crochet rules and sets were everywhere. Milton loved crochet himself and continued to create new versions of the game. He made a similar set with smaller clubs for children and light, portable ones for family to take with them. When they traveled, crochet remained a popular outdoor game for decades. In 1867, a very different kind of game became popular over the United States. The Terrible 15 Puzzle was a handheld flat square with 16 spaces for square tiles. It became with 15 tiles in place, leaving one space empty. The tiles had numbers on them, but they were out of order. The object was to put the numbers in order from 1 to 15. The empty space created room to move the tiles. The puzzle drove people crazy. Everyone wanted to solve it. Newspapers wrote stories about it. One man playing a puzzle on a ferry boat grew so frustrated that he threw it into the water, then tried to dive after it. The Milton Bradley Company began to produce its own version. Milton didn't like the word terrible in the name, though. He named his puzzle the Mystic 15 puzzle. It was a big hit. The Milton Bradley Company was very busy in 1867. They were making games by then, many games by then. The business was doing well. Milton was not concerned with the company's success. He was worried about his wife. Vilona had been ill for the past year, and in March 1867 she died. Milton was devastated. He was 31 years old and alone. For weeks he couldn't work. He went on long walks to fill his lonely days. Finally, he asked his parents to come live with him in Springfield. Milton gave his father a job at the Milton Bradley Company. With his mother and father close by, Milton began to feel better. He began to think about games again. Chapter 7. Toys for Learning. Milton went back to making games, but he also became interested in something else: education. A music teacher in Springfield introduced him to the ideas of a German man named Friedrich Froebel, who talked about something called kindergarten. Most schools in the 18,000s focused on learning through memorizing facts and numbers, but Froebel thought that children learned better by playing. So he believed that children could learn at a very young age. Froebel started kindergartens for classes for children as young as 5 years old. Kindergarten means children's garden in German. Kindergarten students played games and sang songs. They learned to build, count, add, and subtract by using different colored blocks, balls, sticks, and rings. Milton thought that this idea made sense. He wondered if the Milton Bradley Company would start making the blocks and other toys to be used in kindergartens. But the man who ran the business disagreed. They thought the Milton Bradley Company should stick with just games. Milton's friend George Tapley and his wife, Mary, worried about Milton being lonely. They kept introducing to some of their other friends in the hope they would fall in love and remarry. Milton was always polite, but wasn't really interested. He was busy with his work. One day, Milton visited Tapley's house, and a young woman named Neil Thayer was there. She was planning to become a teacher. Milton thought Neil was intelligent and beautiful. They talked for hours. They began to spend time together. Milton even taught her how to play the crochet. They became engaged on Christmas Eve and married in 1869. They moved into a new house, and Milton's parents stayed in his old house. Milton and Neil were just settling into married life when they heard Elizabeth Peabody, a teacher from Boston, was coming to Springfield. She was giving a lecture about kindergartens. Milton and his father went to listen to her. Elizabeth Peabody's stories about how her students enjoyed learning captured Milton's imagination. Milton and his father had taught Milton when he was a young boy, and Milton thought that was the right to learn. He decided his company would start making the blocks and balls and other things Friedrich Froebel said kindergarten students needed to learn. The business managers of the company weren't happy about these ideas. They just wanted to keep making games and weren't interested in expanding the company to make educational blocks and toys. But Milton didn't care about that. He cared about changing children's lives for the better. The Milton Bradley Company was growing. In 1868, it had moved from Main Street to a bigger building on Bliss Street. In 1870, They moved to an even bigger 5-story building on Harrison Avenue. Milton's family was growing too. His first daughter, Florence, was born on June 22nd, 1874. Milton was thrilled, but also sad. His mother had died before Florence was born. He and Niall invited Milton's father to come live with them and baby Florence. Milton's business partners, J.F. Tapley and Clark Barron, grew nervous about all the time and effort Milton put into making blocks and toys for kindergarten. They were inexpensive, so that teachers could afford them, but they didn't make much money for the company. In 1878, G.F. Tapley and Clark Barron announced that they were leaving the company, but George Tapley disagreed. He told Milton that he should stick with the kindergarten products he believed in. Later that same year, George agreed to join the Milton Bradley Company. Finally, the two lifelong friends would be working together. George owned 4 buildings on Cross Street in Springfield. The company moved into George's buildings, and the Bradleys' second daughter, Lillian Alice, was born on January 13, 1881. There wasn't yet a kindergarten in Springfield, but Milton and Nellie used Froebel's ideas to teach their daughters. Sometimes the girls even helped Milton to come up with new ideas. One day, Milton found Florence struggling to memorize multiplication tables. Milton told her to bring some friends over to the house. When Florence returned with her friends, Milton gave each girl 3 toothpicks. He asked each girl how many she had. Then he showed them how 3 times 2 girls made 6 toothpicks, and 3 times 3 girls combined to form 9 toothpicks. The girls understood, and Milton had a new idea. The company began to make multiplication sticks, brightly colored sticks that helped students make groups for multiplying numbers. Milton and Nellie had guests over for dinner almost every night. Often the guests included Massachusetts teachers, principals, and school superintendents. They wanted to learn more about the educational products Milton was making. He wanted to hear about new ideas in the school and the growth of kindergartens. Milton thought about all the other things teachers needed in kindergartens. He had always believed that bright colors were important for the games he made. He thought color mattered to children too. The company began to make crayons, water paints, and colored paper. Kindergartens became more colorful places, and teachers had much more useful tools with which to teach. So that's all chapter 6 and chapter 7, and I will see you in chapter 8 and chapter 9.